All right, to discuss more on this, we are being joined by John Erith from Washington, D.C. He is a senior policy director for the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation in Washington. He is also the former member of the U.S. delegation to NATO. Thank you so much for taking your time and joining us today. Now, let me begin by asking you, Putin has given a clear warning saying we will make appropriate decisions based on the threats that will be created for us. Now, what kind of a Russian response do you think we can anticipate? Is this a rhetoric or it's a clear warning?
We have heard many such warnings from Russian leaders over the past 2.5 years. There was a warning if any military aid would go to Ukraine at all. There was a warning if the aid was not strictly defensive in nature. There was a warning if aircraft, if tanks were provided. So this is yet another in a series. The rhetoric is perhaps a little bit stronger at this time. And because we are dealing with a nuclear-armed power in Russia, it is well to take such warnings very seriously. But that's why the President of the United States has a very difficult job. He has to balance the risks of authorizing the use of weapons at military targets in Russia with the possibilities that Russia will take some other kind of action. It's difficult to understand what kind of action Russia would take against NATO countries. NATO is very well defended, but the risk is there.
Mr. Erith, as you mentioned, that the rhetoric is stronger this time, and even a little earlier, Putin made it clear that there will be no peace talks now after the Kursk incursion happened. Now, at this point, now it is a lot of reports are suggesting that U.S. is almost on the brink of giving that permission to Ukraine to use those long-range weapons inside Russia. It is assumed that those permissions will be given with restrictions, that these are the areas that you can target and perhaps these are the areas that you cannot. But who's to say what or how Ukraine will be using those weapons, given the nature of the war? Because Russia is not holding back, so Ukraine will consider itself justified in not holding back either. Do you feel that raises tensions for the West even more?
It's very difficult to speculate on the nature of confidential discussions between governments, so I will not do that. I can say from a military point of view, there are obvious things that Ukraine could target, military targets, such as command and control facilities, troop assembly areas, transportation hubs, things like that, that would be high-value targets. These are high-value weapons. They're limited in supply. They're expensive. So the traditional military doctrine would be not to fire them blankly against muddy villages, but to hit such high-value military targets as command.
Right. Talking of diplomatically, where does the peace talks now stand? We have countries like India, trying to solve this conflict maybe diplomatically, but where does this warning leave the peace talks now?
The peace talks are about where they have been for 2.5 years. Which is to say at a standstill. Russia refuses to discuss terms of peace with Ukraine unless Ukraine surrenders significant portions of its territory. Ukraine refuses to discuss peace while Russia is occupying territory. Those basic conditions have not changed. Both sides have indicated that when they do, they will be open to peace talks. Many nations, the initiative of Switzerland was particularly notable, have indicated that they are willing to facilitate such talks, but we have not entered the conditions yet where that would be likely.
Definitely, times seem to be getting more and more tense as the war is very much into its third year. One would have assumed by now it would start settling down at some point, but it doesn't seem so, at least not in the near future. Thank you so much for joining in, sir. That was John Erith joining us from Washington, D.C. Always a pleasure hearing your thoughts and your analysis on current issues.
Thank you very much.